only thing we have to fear is
in war.
fear itself.
There is no substitute for victory.
Let us never negotiate out of fear.
We stand undivided, forever united, fighting hand in hand for the liberty we've earned, for glory and honor, for our sons and daughters, ever mindful of the lessons we've learned. Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome to the intersection of faith and politics. This is WallBuilders Live with David Barton and Rick Green. It's Friday, so it's Good News Friday. And you can learn more about our program and our Friday programs and get some more good news at our website, wallbuilderslive.com, and also our other website, wallbuilders.com. The thing about Fridays is we talk about what's happening around the nation and around the world, some of the good news that's happening, and some examples of what happens when you do stand up and fight. Normally at this part of the program on a Friday, David, I immediately toss it to you, but can I start the good news today?
Wow. Are you feeling okay, bro?
I don't think I've ever done this. All these years we've been doing the program, I just say, hey, we're going to have some good news, and then you get to do all the good news. And
yeah.
I'm just feeling left out, so I thought maybe I would throw some good news out there.
Let's see what you got on this. This will be fun.
Okay, so the truth is it's so good I can't help but throw it out there. There's several articles that have come out talking about this, and we'll have links today for folks to be able to go and read, but most of our listeners know that, David, you come under constant attack for standing up for truth and for, frankly, what some people consider, they accuse you of even things like revisionist history, when in truth what you're doing is you're bringing back the original truth of history that they have revised. So it is revisionist to them because you're revising back to the truth. But anyway, because you do that, you end up with a lot of enemies out there and folks that have attacked you over the years. And over the years they've been, shall we say less than honest, or just go ahead and say they've been absolutely untruthful. I think you've been maligned and lied about as much as just about anybody out there these days in the culture war. And, our listeners don't know this more than likely, but a few years ago, it finally got to the point where you said, okay, it's time to do what Jefferson did and Rush, or Jefferson didn't do, but Benjamin Rush and another founder did. It's time to go to the courts and straighten out the record. And recently, you won a $1 million lawsuit, defamation lawsuit, for these folks that are out there just spreading lies about you, both about your history itself and about you personally, and claiming things about you that absolutely weren't true. So I am so excited that the record has been set straight, and that already it's causing other people that were spreading lies about you to go, whoa, time out, put the brakes on. Something must be wrong here. And now they've checked their facts and gone back and said, I retract what I said. So for me, bro, this is one of the best Good News Fridays we've ever had, because I've watched you get maligned like that, and it's just a righteous day. I'm just thrilled to see you be vindicated on these things. So God bless the attorneys that represented you in this case, and thank God for favor in this case to get that good news out there that the record's getting set straight.
Man, thanks for bringing that up. That was really kind of you. I mean, I don't know what to say, but thank you.
It's a big victory, man. Big victory. And it's funny, when I go out and speak sometimes, people come up and talk to me about things, and I say, man, I wish David would punch back on some of this stuff. I wish he would talk, go back on them and set the record straight on those things. And again, our listeners, man, you're a very humble guy, and you just go out there and speak truth. And you remind me of MLK. I mean, it's peaceful in the face of violent protest. And so in this case, it was just nice to see that for those people that had been maligning you all these years, finally kind of got it handed to them. And I'm excited. I think it's great news, and I wanted our listeners to know about it and encourage them to go to the website today. We'll have a couple links. There's been stuff on national news sites around the country reporting this, and I wanted to share it with them as well. So there, I got to do the first good news. I should have done it last week. It would have been the first good news of the year, and I would have felt really good about that. But that's okay. Second Friday of the year, I'll still get to jump in there.
That's right. Well, thanks for doing that. And a couple things just for clarifying, too, that I think are really significant is, one is it was a very sizable economic judgment, but we kept none of the money because we didn't sue to get money. We sued on this thing. Proverbs 22:1 says that a good name is more to be desired than riches. And reputation is what you got. That's what'll endure. Who knows how many of the founders were rich or poor? Nobody thinks about that. But how many of them kept their word? How many had integrity? How many of them gave their lives, their fortunes, their sacred? You remember people by integrity. Benjamin Rush said that of all the human virtues, he was convinced that integrity was more remembered among the living and the dead than any other virtue. And so that's a big deal. So we weren't after the money, therefore we didn't keep any money. That all went elsewhere. But the other thing is, it's also a vindication for a lot of folks, because there's a lot of folks who have tried to quote these history things. And one of the things we've done over the years is we footnote stuff to excess. I mean, it's almost distracting to read, like an original intent. You know, we got like 1,500 footnotes in there. In the Jefferson Lives, there's like 1,000 footnotes.
No, it's like a, you know, when you hold the book up, it's if you put your finger at the back where the footnotes start, it's about a quarter of the book.
Yeah, that's right. And so we've always documented. And so now people quote stuff. Oh, you're quoting Barton. He's a discredited historian. He makes up his history. Well, guess what? For those people who have used those quotes and been beat up for it, this now vindicates them as well. And that was what we were also very, very conscious of, is we don't want people to be drugged down because we get beat up. We want them to be able to use historical quotes and not get their brains beat in. And so this really is a vindication for everybody who is concerned about original intent, and everybody who wants to quote things about the faith of the Founding Fathers or things like that, that now you've got to wait when they say, oh, that's all made up. No. Here's a judgment. Here's a defamation suit. Here's the court judgment that says, no, that stuff was defamatory. That was false and defamatory. And so, you know, hopefully it'll be used by everybody who wants to push forward with original intent and good history from the Founding Fathers. But thanks for bringing it up. It is a big piece of good news. And
I'll take it even one step further than those people out there that wanted to also share those quotes, is that it's a vindication of the truth itself. I mean, in other words, if people are able to malign you and therefore get people to no longer use those quotes from the Founding Fathers and bring that truth out about what the Founders did, then we lose the values themselves that were espoused by the Founding Fathers in those quotes. So it's no different than, I remember I used to get so upset in the mid-'90s when Clinton and Gore would run around and talk about the 80s as the worst economy in 50 years and 12 years of this and 12 years of that, when in fact Reagan's tax cuts were created a great economy and all kinds of economic, you know, best peacetime expansion in history. But if they could malign the record and malign him, then it would cause people to not be willing to use the policy of tax cuts and supply side economics, and it worked for a long time. And it's the same thing here. If you don't set the record straight, you don't just lose those reputations, you lose the values and the truth that was at the heart of those things. So it is a vindication and a victory for you and for your reputation, for the others out there that have taken your books and the quotes and brought them back to the forefront of the culture, and also a vindication for those founders themselves and that truth that our education system has forgotten for so long. You're the guy that brought it back in this modern era, and so this is a great victory for those founders as well. Got to take a quick break. It's such great news to start the year with. I can't imagine all the good news we're going to get in 2015. I'm seeing some great things coming, folks. You got to stay with us. We'll be right back on WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. In the minds of many today, government is a purely secular institution and is not in any way to be joined to religious principles. The result is that too often our public policies are now enacted without any consideration of their spiritual consequences. However, the Founding Fathers believed that even a political act should always be examined from a spiritual viewpoint. For example, in his inaugural address, President George Washington declared, "We ought to be persuaded that the favorable smiles of heaven can never be expected on a nation that disregards the eternal rules of order and right which heaven itself has ordained." President George Washington believed that the blessings of heaven would reside on this nation only so long as its national policies embraced godly standards.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
We're back here on WallBuilders Live. Good News Friday today, so we're bringing you some good news from across the nation. And I took out the first segment. I got to do all the good news in the first segment, David. So I guess it's time to punt to you for some good news here.
Well, we're starting the year, which means that we're now we've had the new Congress sworn in, the representatives and senators, congressmen and the senators are there. And it's interesting to look back and remember what happened just really now about 2 months ago. And one of the things that's really good to remember is what did not work 2 months ago. And if you remember, leading up to the election, one of the things that had establishment Republicans running for cover was the war on women. Oh, my gosh, they've made us part of the war on women. We have to appeal. And so they were going over. And it's like back in the Clinton days, they had what they called soccer moms. And soccer moms were those moms that were moms with kids, but they were pro-abortion moms with kids. And so everything they said everything has to be appealed to the soccer moms. You got to appeal to the pro-abortion moms, otherwise we're losing the moms, which wasn't true. And on this one, it's like, oh, the war on women, man, you can't stand on the pro-life side because that's part of the war on women. You're denying women health care and you're denying them reproductive freedom, and et cetera. And so that was part of the big campaign, and it is really interesting to go back and remember and see how well that worked out, because the Democrats, the libs, trotted out the war on women throughout those races. If you remember the incumbent Colorado senator was Mark Udall, and the issue he harped on so much was abortion, the war on women. Republicans would deny you the abortion rights that you have. And so even the liberal media began calling him not Mark Udall, but Mark Uterus. I mean, that was the name they gave him.
No kidding.
But yeah, he was so fixated on reproductive rights. And how'd that work out? Well, he got pounded by Cory Gardner, who is pro-life. So war on women didn't really work well in Colorado, which is one of those purple states, actually probably more blue in recent years. Then you go to Texas, and you remember Wendy Davis. The one thing that made Senator Wendy Davis a national figure was the filibuster she did in the Texas Senate on abortion. I mean, she stood there and filibustered, and it got really ugly, but she stood there for hours and took it on. And so that made her automatically a front runner. So here she is, a woman, and she is running against Greg Abbott, the Attorney General, who has been arguing cases against abortion and for life. Wendy Davis couldn't even win the women's vote in Texas. I mean, she running as part of, I'm going to stop you from the war on women because Greg Abbott will be part of the war on women. She couldn't even win the women's vote in Texas. And then if you go to Maryland, Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown there, I mean, it seemed like a no-brainer. He's going to be elected because that Maryland is a deep, deep blue state. It's a 2-to-1 registration of Democrats over Republicans. And so what he did was he ran all sorts of ads promising to promote abortion on demand and all this. He was really openly pro-abortion, and the state sent in a Republican. And in a 2-to-1 Democrat state, they sent in a Republican because he was just over so the war on women stuff didn't work in Maryland. Kansas, they did the same thing with Governor Brown back. They did the same thing in the Senate race there. Abortion was the big issue. He's way too pro-life. He's part of the war on women, and he ends up winning re-election. And so just in race after race after race after race, it turns out that the pro-life side really, really did well. So when you look on it, we now have more pro-life women serving in Congress than ever before in U.S. history. This is the largest pro-life group of women we have ever had. And, that just kind of proves that war on women rhetoric was something the media was into, and liberals and moderates and Republican establishment running from it. And you run toward life, and it really does well. And that proved in this election. But the other thing is, remember how many state legislatures flipped this time. I mean, Republicans now hold more state houses than in any time for almost a century. And guess what that means for all these laws that will come out, pro-life laws coming at the state level. We've already seen since 2010, every year has sent a record for the number of pro-life laws being passed by state legislatures. And now you've got a bunch more state legislatures that haven't been in the mix. They haven't been able to do that. So watch all the laws that come out this year as well. So it's just really good news across the nation as we enter into this new legislative session, and state and federal legislators are starting their session. Just expect good things, because you look back and it's a good profile of what happened.
And we definitely need to get the word out about how much that war on women did not work, because, too often, not only is it a bad ploy on their part, but too often you do have sometimes good people that get cowed by that. They get people that to convincing them, oh, well, you don't want to talk about life issue because they'll hit you with the war on women thing. So if our candidates know, if the pro-life folks out there know, hey, that is not going to work, keep standing for truth, they're not going to be be bullied by those ads anymore.
Well, one of the things that really stood out to me in the election back in November was, and really 6 weeks before November, is you're watching who the likelies are and what the polling numbers are doing and who's gaining, who's winning. You look in Michigan, and it looked for a while like Michigan might be able to pick up a U.S. Senate seat there to a pro-life woman. And this is part of the stuff that happens in politics, is you can have some really good candidates, but you can have some really bad campaign teams. And campaign teams can drag down good candidates. And so we had a good pro-life woman running up there in Michigan. And, I don't know their campaign team, and this is my speculation, but I've been through so many campaigns and so many campaign teams that this made me think, this is not a good campaign team she has around her, because when they attacked her as a woman and made her part of the war on women, and they allowed that charge to stick in that campaign, and that's not a good campaign team. I mean, if you can't make that a ridiculous charge by making a woman part of the war on women, how dumb is that claim? But they didn't rebut that. They didn't allow it to stay. And so she appeared to be an incompetent candidate. And I don't know that she was, because I think she was a good lady, but boy, the team certainly underperformed. And so that's a good thing to remember. Instead of attacking that and saying, yeah, she's pro-life, and no, that's not part of the war on women, they just got real squishy and real silent. And as a result, you have a seat there that might have been a winnable seat that didn't come out that way. So you're right. It's a good thing for people to remember that this nonsense and this rhetoric, when it gets raised, you push back. You go on the offensive, and that's the best way to win, is going on the offensive, not the defensive.
And we're, like you said before that, we're gonna get to see the results of all of these great candidates that did win over the next few months. So more of that good news coming in 2015. If it's anything like the result in 2010, when we had so many new pro-life folks get elected to state legislatures, we're going to see a lot of good legislation coming out throughout this year. Which means the election might be over, but the process is not over, and so our listeners are going to have lots of opportunities to weigh in their particular state as that legislation moves through. Be sure and be calling your state reps and your senators, or if you live close to your capital or can get there, go testify. There's going to be some great opportunities this year to make some great gains for life all across the nation. Very quick break. When we come back, we'll get some more good news. Stay with us right here on WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. What is the purpose of government? Founding Father Oliver Ellsworth believed he knew. Oliver Ellsworth was a delegate at the convention which formed the Constitution, and later he became the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. Concerning the purpose of government, Oliver Ellsworth declared, "The primary objects of government are the peace, order, and prosperity of society." Yet how were these goals to be achieved? Ellsworth explained, "To the promotion of these objects, good morals are essential. Institutions for the promotion of good morals are therefore objects of legislative provision and support, and among these, religious institutions are eminently useful and important." Founding Father Oliver Ellsworth believed government could never reach its goals apart from the help of religious institutions.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back to WallBuilders Live. Good News Friday today, so we're sharing you some good news from around the nation. I'm Rick Green here with David Barton. David, what's next?
Well, just before the year ended, you had the Texas State Board of Education that went in and voted on the textbooks in Texas. And the reason this is significant is the textbooks that come through Texas right now are going to be all over the nation. And so we've covered over the last 3.5 to 4 years some of the progress of these textbooks and all the fights that have been out there and the things that have happened with them. And so what happened was just before the end of the year, the Texas State Board of and just to put it in process, you go back to 4 years ago when they write the standards. And so they write the standards, and there were about 240 teachers involved in that. And then the State Board of Education, which is 15 elected state board members, They selected 6 of us that were called expert reviewers, and so 6 of us looked at the standards, and we made our recommendations to the board on what we thought should be changed. And that was a real bloodbath, and particularly because I was involved, and we had the left groups out there saying, oh, he makes up his history, etc. And so, but they still got all the standards passed and got them all amended in what I think was a very healthy direction. But then for textbook publishers, they have to write their text. If they want Texas to buy their textbooks, and every publisher does, because if you can sell your textbooks in Texas, you can get back the investment money it takes you to write a curriculum series, which may be about $20 million. So you want to sell your textbooks here. Then you have textbook publishers that start publishing to those standards. And then after they do, they submit those textbooks back to Texas, and another citizen board has to go through and make sure that every single standard in the Texas standards appears in those textbooks. If it does not, if you neglect one standard out of maybe 500, then your textbook will not be accepted in the state of Texas, and you don't get that chance to recover your money. So every textbook has, so the State Board of Education voted just before the end of the year, and they approved 89 textbooks and other classroom materials that met all the standards, went through and met everything that we had there. And the reason this is significant is we have, now grab this, we have 5 million public school students in Texas, 5 million. I had Justin look this up just a minute ago on break, and 5 million, do you know how many states have fewer than 5 million in their state? Now, we're just talking public school students in Texas.
You're saying fewer than 5 million people, not
fewer
just
than
students.
5 million, people, not students. So we got 5 million public school students in Texas. You know how many states have fewer than 5 million in the whole state?
More Man, than, I'm going to get. Can I just guess? I'm going to guess 8 or 9.
No. So we got 5 million public school students in Texas, and when you look at states in the United States whose entire population is 5 million or less, there's 29 entities on the national chart that have fewer citizens total than just public school students in Texas.
You're kidding me.
So
we have more
that
public
counts
schools.
D.C. So there's 51 because they count D.C. in there. So this is a big deal. I mean, when Texas passes this, is big. Now, the big fight that we had and this final vote was the Texas Freedom Network. And the Texas Freedom Network, by the way, and that defamation suit that you mentioned early on, they were one of the groups that were listed as supplying the bad information, the defamatory information. And so they brought out 52 professors to protest what the state board was doing, because they said that the state board, that what we had done on it was we had made Moses into one of the founding fathers. Now, I want to read to you the standard that we had, and this is what sent them through the roof, and this tells you how ridiculous it is and how sensitive they are, how phobic they are to any mention of religion or faith at all. Here's the standard. Here it says history. The student understands how constitutional government, as developed in America and expressed in the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, and the U.S. Constitution, has been influenced by ideas, people, and historical documents. The student is expected to identify the individuals whose principles of law and government institutions informed the American founding documents, including those of Moses, William Blackstone, John Locke, and Charles de Montesquieu. Now, having Moses in there with those other 3 sent these folks through the roof, and 52 professors say, oh, you can't do that. Moses is not a founding father. Well, guess what? Blackstone's not a founding father.
Right.
Nor is
Locke's
Locke,
not
nor
a
is
founding
Montesquieu. You know, how dumb is that? But they're saying these are the people. Now, why would they choose those 3 and Moses? Because in a very, very semi-exhaustive study that was done by the University of Houston political science professors, they said, where'd the founding fathers, where'd the founding era get their ideas? And they searched 15,000 documents in the founding era, and they found that the 4 most cited sources, number 1 was the Bible, number 2 was Montesquieu, number 3 was Blackstone, and number 4 was Locke. And out of the Bible, the most frequently cited source, there were 5 books that were the most frequently cited books in the Bible, and 4 of the 5 were written by Moses. So Moses overwhelmingly is the most cited source out of the Bible, and then you've got Montesquieu, and then you got Blackstone, and then you got Locke, and those are the 4 individuals in the Texas standards. Guess what? That's because political scientists have proved through examining 15,000 founding era writings that those are the 4 most cited sources, and yet these secular professors go through the roof and said Moses is not a founding father. Of course he wasn't a founding father, but he did have huge influence. And the other standard that set them off, it says government. The student understands how contemporary political systems have developed from earlier systems of government. The student is expected to identify the impact of political and legal ideas contained in the following documents: Hammurabi's Code, the Jewish Ten Commandments, Justinian's Code of Laws, Magna Carta, the English Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution, the Declaration of Rights of the Man and of the Citizen. Now, because the Ten Commandments appeared in that list of documents, they again went through the roof, trying to cram religion down the throats. Time out. Just go to the secular U.S. Supreme Court, more than 50 depictions of the Ten Commandments inside the U.S. Supreme Court. Is the Supreme Court trying to cram religion down the... And how come when you walk in the U.S. House chamber, of the 23 lawgivers that are listed there, which include Hammurabi and Justinian and others, Moses is the only one that's looking down on the House chambers. Everybody else has a side profile view. I mean, just our architecture shows that the Ten Commandments have a huge role, that Moses... And so for us to teach what our government buildings themselves declare suddenly was phobic stuff, but the good news is, despite all the noise these 52 professors and Texas Freedom Network raised, we still overwhelmingly passed those textbooks that reflected those teachings and this aspect of history in it. By 10-5 vote, we won that all the way through. So more good news to start the year. And by the way, that means that this is coming to a state near you. These Texas textbooks will appear in every other state in the United States.
Who says common sense is dead? Here was a great common sense victory. I mean, it just makes sense to go make sure that you're quoting these guys that our founding fathers actually quoted. I'm so glad we won this one, man. It boggles the mind how the opposition makes these arguments with a straight face. But great victory, great news. We got to share some great news with you today, folks. We want to share more with you next week, so be sure and tune in later for WallBuilders Live. Find out more on our website, wallbuilderslive.com.
We stand undivided.